Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast presents a history of, and today it's a history of AFC Bournemouth. But first let me introduce myself. I'm your host Paul O'Toole, and joined virtually opposite me, back there somewhere, is my co-host Thomas Falco.
Hello!
So, just like in the previous clubs that we've looked at, we're going to look at the city, or the town, as Bournemouth are, first, where they were formed. It's a coastal town, south coast of England. In the 2011 census, it had a population of 183,000. It was founded in 1810 by Lewis Tregonwell. Pronounce that. I did well to pronounce that, I think. It was originally, Bournemouth as an area was originally heathland, occasionally visited by fishermen and smugglers. Initially marketed as a health resort, the town received a boost when it appeared in an 1841 book, Spas of England. Bournemouth's growth accelerated with the arrival of the railway and close proximity to London. It officially became a town in 1870. So when you actually think about some of the other places we've looked at in this, and even in this podcast series, very young town in terms of British history. Part of the historic county of Hampshire, Bournemouth joined Dorset for administrative purposes following the reorganisation of local governments in 1974 through local government changes in 1997. The town began to be independent as part of the Dorset County Council. The town itself, its economic beginnings was, as I said, a spa town, so it was used very much for sort of holiday resorts, etc., which still brings a large economy today. However, it's now an international centre of finance. It's worth more than 100 million in terms of gross value added to the GDP. So very, very important town. In terms of football terms, you're going to look at Bournemouth Football Club and its beginnings, because it's quite interesting beginnings.
It was indeed, Paul. Just first of all to say there were a couple of there's a couple of different sort of ins into how this club was formed, or their beginnings before the proper formation of the football club. I'm just going to go into what I could find for definite, so if I've missed out a couple of years, I apologise first and foremost. They were founded in the autumn of 1899 from the remains of the older Boscombe St John's Institute Football Club as Boscombe. They competed in the Bournemouth and District Junior League before graduating to senior amateur football during the 1905-1906 season. In 1920, Boscombe were promoted to the Southern League. 3 years later, in order to make Boscombe more representative of the district, the club changed their name to Bournemouth and Boscombe Football Club and were elected to the newly expanded 3rd Division South. The club adopted their current name of AFC Bournemouth in 1971 with the intention to appear first in an alphabetical list of league clubs. That is a fantastic thing to do, isn't it, when you think about it?
That's a brilliant way, I love that.
Just forget to mention as well that the initial meeting where they were founded in the autumn of 1899 took place under the streetlights in Gladstone Road, apparently, which adds a little bit of romance to the proceedings. They are nicknamed the Cherries. There are a couple of different reasons why this could be. I will mention my findings for both, either due to their cherry red striped shirts or because Dean Court, which is their ground, although under a different guise at the moment, was built next to the Cooper Dean estate, which had cherry orchid trees growing amongst the grounds of that place. So the two different reasons why they could be called the Cherries. Their initial club colours were red and white stripes. They have also played in red with white sleeves, and their current red and black stripes since 1990. They initially adopted the red and black stripes in 1971, basing their kit on AC Milan's. Their initial badge was Bournemouth's coat of arms and adorned their shirts between 1923 and 1971. In 1971, they used their current badge, a silhouette of club legend, former striker Dickie Dowsett, heading a football. Now, I always thought that was a lady heading a football because of the long hair. I never knew
I did as
till
well.
researching that, but it is a silhouette of Dickie Dowsett heading a football. In the late 1980s, the club used two cherries behind a football as its crest, but returned to the current day design in 1983. I'll give a lot of credit there to a website called The Beautiful History Of, which it's got a lot of fascinating information there about all types of football clubs, so that's well worth a visit, and thank you for their research into that. Their history of their ground: initially they played at a ground on Castlemaine Avenue in Folkestone. They then relocated to Kings Park, very close to their current stadium. In 1910, Mr. J.E. Cooper Dean granted the club a long lease on wasteland next to their ground. They named this new ground Dean Court in his honour. The ground was completely rebuilt in 2001, rotating the pitch 90 degrees amongst other changes. Due to sponsorship, it has been named the Fitness First Stadium, the Seaward Stadium, the Gold Sands, and their current name, the Vitality Stadium, in the year 2015. So they've not a very big history of grounds like some football clubs. I'm okay to move on to the Roll of Honour, Paul. You okay?
Yeah, move on to the honours.
So the Roll of Honour, unfortunately quite small for AFC Bournemouth, but it doesn't really matter because the achievements in getting up to the Premier League in later years have been fantastic. I'm just going to refer to this as second, third and fourth tiers because there have been different names over the years, as with our previous podcast. So they were the second tier champions, that was the championship in 2014-15. They were the third tier champions in 1986-87 and runners-up in 1947-48 and 2012-2013. They were fourth tier runners-up in 1970-71 and 2009-2010. They won the fourth tier playoffs in 2003, beating Lincoln 5-2 with goals from Stephen Fletcher, Carl Fletcher scoring a brace, Stephen Purchase and Gareth O'Connor, and they were promoted from the fourth tier in 1981-82. They were the Southern Football League runners-up 1922-23, Associate Members Cup or Football League Trophy. They were the winners in 1983-84, beating Hull 2-1 with Milton Graham and Paul Morrell on the score sheet. They were runners-up in 97-98. And the Football League 3rd Division South Cup, they were the winners in 1945-46. As far as their records go, their record league victory was an 8-0 win over Birmingham City, quite recent as well, 25th of October 2014. Their record cup victory was an 11-0 triumph over Margate in November 1971. Their record league defeat was a 9-0 trouncing against Lincoln City on the 18th of December 1882. I couldn't find their highest attendance, so apologies for that. Most appearances, 726. Steve Fletcher between 1992 and 2007, then 2009 to 2013, so he was most definitely a servant of the club. Most goals scored in all competitions, 229. Ron Eyre between 1924 and 1933. Their most capped player whilst playing for the club is Tokelo Ranti, who got 24 caps for South Africa in his time at Bournemouth. Record transfer fee paid, £25 million for Jefferson Lerma from Levante in 2018, and their record transfer fee recouped, although Paul is going to go into a lot more detail about these in a moment. £41 million for Nathan Ake to Manchester City at the start of this season, I believe, wasn't it? Their longest serving manager, Eddie Howe, of course, who else? 2 spells at the club between January 2009 and January 2011, then he went to Burnley, then decided to come back between October 2012 and August 2020. I could find 458 games in all competitions that he was the manager of Bournemouth. Paul, I know you want to go into more detail about their transfers, so over to you.
Yeah, I just want to look at sort of their top 6 or 7 transfers and the timelines. So when you look at, as we'll move on to the seasons in a second and where they were from sort of 1990 to the present day. Obviously, you mentioned Jefferson Lerma, reported 25 million. Second, Nathan Ake, 20 million from Chelsea. Now, obviously, they then subsequently sold him for 41 million, so good profit. Dominic Solanke, 19 million from Liverpool. These transfers were Jefferson Lerma in August 18, Nathan Ake in June 17, January 19 was Dominic Solanke. Philip Billing from Huddersfield Town, 15 million, July 19. Jordan Ibe, July 16. That's the oldest of their transfers in this list. Another 15 million. Dianjama, 13.7 million in August 19. Lloyd Kelly from Bristol City, 13 million in 2019. Move on to, so obviously that was records paid. Now when you think of that as a that's 150 million pounds pretty much they will take in the space of, say, 3 years, if you include the Jordan Ibe transfer, which they subsequently released on a free. Incredible when you will then look at the seasons. And I think that was kind of a really good sort of point to make. So when you look at their list of seasons since since 1990, and that includes obviously the change of Premier League coming out as well. So they started in 1990, 1991, they were in Division 3, they finished 9th. In 1991, 1992, they finished 8th. In 1992, 1993, obviously they were in Division 3, so then subsequently were in Division 2 with the formation of the Premier League. They finished 17th. 93 to 94, still in Division 2, 17th. 94 to 95, still in Division 2, 19th. 1995, 96, still in Division 2, 14th. 96, 97, 16th. 1997 to 1998, 9th. 98 to 99, they finished 7th. 1999 to 2000, 16th. 2000 to 2001, still in Division 2, 7th. 2001 to 2002, they were relegated from Division 2, having finished 23rd on 44 points. They then were promoted the following season, 2002 to 2003, from Division 3 to Division 2. Having finished 4th, they won promoted via the playoffs. In 2003 to 2004, they finished 9th in Division 2. And then we move on to Division 2 being renamed to League 1. They finished 8th that season in 2004-2005. They then finished 17th in the following season, 05-06. They then finished 19th, 06-07. They then were relegated to League 2 in 07-08, having finished 21st on 48 points. However, that season we will come into, they were deducted 10 points for going into administration. In League 2, they finished 21st the following season. Deducted 17 points for leaving administration without a CVA. So they finished 21st that season. 09 to 2010, they were promoted. They finished second on 83 points. In 2010, 2011, they finished 6th. In 2011, 2012, they finished 11th. In 2012, 2013, they were promoted from League 1. They finished second on 83 points. In 2013 to 2014, they finished 10th. And that was obviously in the Championship. In 2014, 2015, so after their second season in the Championship, they finished first on 90 points. Having scored 98 goals, only lost 8 games all season. They were then in the Premier League, and this is where, obviously, we're then going to talk about those transfers that have just happened. So when we've talked about all of that, we talked a lot around League 1, a couple of spells in League 2, 2 seasons in the Championship, then they're in the Promised Lands. 2015, 2016, they finished 16th. 2016, 2017, they finished 9th. 2017, 2018, they finished 12th. 2018, 2019, they finished 14th. Last season, 19 to 20, they were relegated. They finished on 8. They were 18th, finished on 34 points, having only scored 20. Having only scored 40 goals, conceded 65. Really abysmal season. When you look back at that and you think that's an incredible rise, meteoric rise from pretty much 2014-15. In that Promised Land, them transfers are incredible when you think about that and the sums of money that they were talking about. Then want to move on to the ownership. So in 2008-2009, Bournemouth were forced into administration, suffering a 10-point deduction which put them which relegated them. Their debts of £4 million, which effectively nearly went out of business. Off the field uncertainty continued throughout that season. They did obviously manage to stay afloat. They had to guarantee in the 08-09 season that they could complete the fixtures, because the Football League were doubtful that due to the financial restrictions that Bournemouth were in, or the problems they were in, they were there were doubts as to whether they could complete the rest of the season. There was an attempt to block Bournemouth's participation in League Two due to these problems and continued administration. This led to a change of ownership. Bournemouth were not the only season that season to have financial problems. Rotherham in that league also had issues in at that point in time, which team that we cover weekly. They were then deducted 17 points following a Football League insolvency rules. So when you think in the space of 2 seasons they've lost 27 points. Now, I think the thing to say about that is quite incredibly is the season they were deducted 17 points, they didn't actually get relegated. Which I think is really quite incredible.
I think
you're gonna lose.
I think the fans were cutting. Well, I think the fans were on edge all the season, because I think they only ensured their safety a couple of games before the end of the season, didn't they? With a 2-1 win over Grimsby. So that isn't as if they were just like that or whatever. They were down there all season because of that. But the fact they stayed up, as you say, and from small acorns, because that. What they term the Great Escape, and I'm pretty sure that there are many clubs who get points deducted in any league. I mean, you look at Sheffield Wednesday in the current season, we're covering 2021. To overcome a 6-point deduction and get out of the relegation zone is massive for them, but to overcome 17 points and stay up in the Football League, not just their league, but in the Football League, is a phenomenal achievement.
And then to get the following season, to then move from, you finish 21st to then finish 2nd. So they got promoted. From their 17-point deduction, they then get promoted the following season. They finish 6th in that season. They finish 6th and are in the playoffs. They then finish 11th. They then get promoted again. They then finish 10th in their first season in the Championship. But bear in mind, that's the first time they'd been in Division 1 since you're going back... it was the first time they'd ever been in Division 1. So effectively they spent 2 seasons there, didn't like the Championship too much, got promoted to the Premier League. That is an unbelievable rise that you'll probably never see again. I mean, let's be perfectly honest, we'll probably never see a meteoric rise like that ever again.
No, not in that short amount of time. We are going to cover a couple of teams in our let's say trudge, that's not the correct word, in our journey through the Championship teams of this season. There are a couple of clubs who were down at the bottom in similar mires, and you look at teams like Hull as well, maybe you could compare them, but you get what you mean. That short space of time in which they have achieved that is absolutely phenomenal, and under the circumstances they found themselves under as well. And you've got to remember, it's not through the fault of the fans or the players on the pitch, it's what goes on behind the scenes. So for clubs to overcome that is phenomenal. And I think in this modern day, with things going on with financial uncertainty, I think that offers a lot of teams who maybe find themselves in similar situations hope that it is horrible and it's happened, but it's not necessarily the end.
When you look at how it happened as well, I think you're interested in that. So the new company that took over, they were ordered to pay all unsecured creditors. They were all unsecured creditors. They were it was around 10 pence on the pound within 2 years. Sorry, bear with me, because this I want to make sure I get the detail right. So early into the season, manager Bond, which I believe they're talking about
Kevin Bond,
his first name, Kevin Bond, was sacked and replaced by former player Jimmy Quinn, who would himself leave the club only a few months later. Former player Eddie Howe took over as manager of the club, with the club still 10 points adrift of the bottom of the league, which is really incredible when you think about it. It was first time management, 10 points adrift. Initially on a caretaker basis, become the youngest ever manager in the Football League at the age of 31. That is incredible. That is just incredible. At the end of 2008, it was announced that local businessman Adam Murray had completed the purchase of 50% of the club shares from the previous chairman Paul Baker. However, in January 2008, Murray missed the deadline to buy Baker's shares. In the final home game of 2008-2009 season, the Cherries guaranteed their Football League status by beating Grimsby Town, as you said, 2-1, and the winning goal 10 minutes from time, Stephen Fletcher, sparking wild celebrations after the fairy tale ending to the Great Escape. They finished their troubled season with their best away win in 30 years with a 4-0 victory over Morecambe. In June 2009, a consortium including Adam Murray finally took over Bournemouth. The consortium included Jeff Motstin, former chairman Steve Sly, Neil Blake, and former Dorset Town chairman Eddie Mitchell. So later in 2011, and this is where the club sits now, Russian owner Maxim Viktorovich Denim bought into the club as well. He became co-owner with Eddie Mitchell, reportedly spending $850,000 to buy his stake in the club. He subsequently sold another 25% of his shares, but he still remains the club's majority shareholder to this day. In terms of financial fair play, it does get a little bit rocky in their 2016 season. So Bournemouth were found guilty of violating FFP during their 14-15 season, which is the season they then secured promotion to the Premier League. The club overspent and broke the maximum threshold with losses of 38.3 million, which does take the kind of the gloss off the fairy tale story a little bit. To think the season they got promoted, they spent 38.3 million to get promoted. This was followed by a loss of 10.3 million in 2013-2014. If you want me to talk about financial fair play, look back at previous podcasts. Listen to our previous podcasts because I go into it in depth. It's an aggregate of 3 season losses, basically. The club was originally fined 7.6 million by the Football League, but subsequently negotiated a settlement of 4.75 for breaching financial fair play. That takes a little bit of gloss off that fairy tale a little bit. However, when you go from 17-point deduction, the club going basically into a non-viable entity, to then surviving and getting to the Premier League, that's a phenomenal story, isn't it?
It is, and when you delve further back as well, it is not the first time that Bournemouth Football Club entered administration as well. I've got the story here again. Fantastic reporting from the Bournemouth Echo. Again, what to expect from the Bournemouth Echo, brilliant stuff. They entered administration in 1997 as the Inland Revenue petitioned for winding up of the club as they owed £350,000. The local paper also reported that Lloyds Bank froze the club's bank account as they were owed £2.1 million, and the club was reportedly in debt to the tune of £4.5 million. A famous meeting now, I implore, we're not going to go into full details here, but read the articles on this. There was a famous meeting at the Winter Gardens Concert Hall, which the sort of club's hierarchy, because most of the board have resigned before this point, so the acting hierarchy and the manager at the time, I believe that was Mel Machin, were playing for fans to dig deep, and that meeting raised £35,000, which was the start of a fighting fund. And then in June that year, Trevor Watkins headed the successful bid that not only led the Cherries out of administration, but turned it into Europe's first community club. So you look at from where they come. Yes, they've been in administration twice, but to get out of the mess they were in, when they held this meeting, they were convinced that they had played their last game as a football club. They were utterly convinced that there was no more they could do, and that was it. But the money raised, the creditor said, "But right, we've got a game to play next," and that got a massive cheer from the people in attendance as well. Bournemouth, we said at the start that their roll of honour is not the sort of greatest of the 24 teams we're going to cover in the Championship this season, but I think their greatest achievement is overcoming the odds twice to not only survive but to keep on going and give themselves this chance of getting to where they did, and in the end their ultimate goal was the Premier League a few seasons back. It's a phenomenal story, and one which for us, obviously Bournemouth are not our club, but they're in the league we love, so we've found a bit of research about them. I didn't know most of this going into this.
No, I didn't.
It's a phenomenal story, and the fans have gone through a lot of heartache. And if you love the game of football like we do, you can't help but get sucked into the emotional side of it and the romantic side of it. And Bournemouth have certainly been through the mire over the last 20-30 years, haven't they? And the other thing I found out as well, through no fault of their own, they played a game, I believe it was in the late 80s, early 90s, when Harry Redknapp was the manager. You think that's where he cut his managerial teeth. They played a game against Leeds towards the end of a season where Leeds went up and Bournemouth went down, but the sort of away fans, I've led to believe, who caused a lot of hassle, shall we say, in the time after that game, caused Bournemouth from being banned from holding games at home on bank holidays, which would have hindered the club severely financially, because they're the most popular times of the year for fans in that level of football. That's where they'd get their highest gate receipts, wouldn't they? Because you'd imagine bank holidays, more potential for people to go, families to go. So even little bits like that where you think, oh, that wouldn't matter if that happened to my club, but that held them back. That was the mid-noughties, I believe, when they were allowed to hold home games on bank holiday weekends. It's an incredible tale of Bournemouth, and the fact that they're plying their trade at the higher echelons of the Championship. When you look back to the early 90s, you wouldn't have thought that was possible. I don't think the most ardent Bournemouth fan would have thought that was possible at that time. Incredible.
Well, they'd have been happy just getting into the Championship.
Oh, yeah.
When you actually look, when you actually look back at the historic, season by season, they'd have just been happy to spend 4, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in the Championship, stable mid-table Championship club. So then think 2 seasons later they're in the Premier League. Unbelievable. And as you say, the roll of honour isn't the trophies they've won; it's the story they've got behind them. And I think that's where, looking at these clubs, we're able to kind of uncover that history, because I only knew Bournemouth pretty much. I knew the story because Sky had told it on numerous occasions with them being in the Premier League, but that was as much as I knew. Didn't know any details, so it's been really interesting to go back. Hope you've enjoyed this. As always, if you want to check out the previous history of YouTube videos, hit us a like, hit subscribe. We will be doing Bristol City next. Then we'll be doing Brentford and Cardiff. We're going to try and do them relatively alphabetical order if we can get our alphabets right. Those of you that are keen-eyed will know why I'm laughing there. Thank you all for watching. As always, if you want a weekly rundown of the Championship games, then check out our Championship Talk podcast, because that is on all major podcast providers, where we break down each game game by game. We also look at the best goal of the week, shock of the week, and game of the week. So absolutely, we do the news segments on YouTube as well. So if you hit subscribe, you'll get that as well. Thank you all for watching, and we'll join you all in a couple of weeks' time when we look at Bristol City. That's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And we'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye.